In 1943, some of the smartest officers in the American military leaned over a table covered in maps of bullet holes. American bombers were flying mission after mission across enemy territory in Europe, and a staggering number of them were not coming home. The military mapped the damage on every surviving plane. A pattern emerged. The wings, tail, and fuselage were completely shredded, but the engines were perfectly clean. Because armor is heavy, they prepared to bolt steel exactly where the red dots were clustered. It is a perfectly logical, completely data-driven decision. The math is right there on the table. And yet, if they had followed through, every pound of steel they added would have actually killed more of their own men. When you trust visible data without questioning how that data actually made it to your desk, you can easily optimize for the exact wrong outcome. It is an error in logic so subtle that brilliant people fall for it constantly, and you are likely making it in your own life. The military's math went to a secret group of statisticians at Columbia University in New York. Among them was mathematician Abraham Wald. Wald looked at the same maps of shredded wings and clean engines, but he asked a question no one else had thought of. Up in the sky, anti-aircraft fire does not politely avoid the engines. The damage is distributed completely randomly. So Wald asked, where are the missing bullet holes? The lack of damage on the engines of the returning planes did not mean the engines weren't getting hit. It meant that any plane hit in the engine was immediately destroyed. Those planes were not sitting in the hangar to be counted. They were at the bottom of the English Channel. Wald's recommendation turned the military's logic inside out. He told them to armor the places with no damage. The clean spots on the survivors were the exact kill zones for the men who didn't make it. This phenomenon is called survivorship bias. The returning planes were never a fair sample of what happens to a bomber. The dataset was filtered by the exact thing the military was trying to measure: survival. The fatal hits quietly removed themselves from the dataset before anyone even started counting. This invisible filtering process shows up everywhere, often making the truth read completely backwards. During the First World War, armies replaced their soft cloth caps with steel helmets. Shortly after, field hospitals noticed a sudden and alarming increase in the number of soldiers arriving with head injuries. Some officials were baffled. Looking strictly at the hospital admissions, the obvious conclusion was that the new helmets were somehow causing more head wounds, failing the exact soldiers they were meant to protect. This chart compares the rate of fatal head wounds to the rate of hospital injuries over that period. The new helmets were working perfectly. A blow to the head that used to result in a dead soldier, someone who was buried and counted among the fatalities, was now resulting in a wounded soldier. They survived long enough to make it to the hospital and be recorded as an injury. Staring strictly at the survivors can easily trick you into seeing a catastrophic failure when you are actually looking at a massive success. Your brain is biologically hardwired to look at what works and copy it. It is a highly efficient shortcut. But when you apply that shortcut to a world heavily filtered by survivorship bias, it turns into a daily psychological trap. We see it constantly in the advice we consume. Take Steve Jobs or Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. They all dropped out of college. From that dataset, the natural lesson floats up. Formal education is optional, and the bold move is to quit and chase your big idea. But you are staring at the airplanes that came back. What you cannot see is the massive, silent field of tens of thousands of people who also dropped out to build a startup, failed, and quietly took on an ordinary job to pay off their debt. Roughly 9 out of 10 startups fail. We make the exact same error when we look at historic architecture. People walk past a heavy stone structure and say they just don't build things with the same care anymore. The evidence seems obvious. The buildings standing today are magnificent. But the cheap, badly built structures of the past aren't missing because people used to build things better. They are missing because they collapsed or were torn down 50 or 100 years ago. Whenever you copy the habits of a highly successful person, even something as simple as asking a 110-year-old about their daily whiskey, you are likely just studying the residue of luck. You have absolutely no way to see the crowd of people who followed that identical routine straight into an early grave. The cost of ignoring this trap is easiest to measure in the financial markets. When you scroll through lists of long-term mutual funds, the average returns look spectacular. It is very easy to conclude that stock pickers possess high-level, consistent skill. This line graph shows what happens to those funds over time. Up to 50% of them perform so poorly that they are eventually shut down or folded into other products. When they close, their ugly numbers are erased from the historical record entirely. The list you are left admiring is just a graveyard with half the headstones removed. When researchers went back and added the dead funds back into the data, the average returns dropped by roughly 1.5% a year. Across decades of compounding, that is a fortune. The supposed skill of these star investors completely melted away. This is why you have to be incredibly careful with the success industry. Any author, founder, or mentor giving you their exact playbook is, by definition, a survivor. If 1,000 people run the same strategy and one of them gets rich, they aren't handing you a repeatable framework. They are handing you a lottery ticket that happened to win. The real information about almost any major decision in life is rarely found in the bright gallery of winners. So before you copy any success story, pause and ask the most important question in the room. Who tried this exact same thing and failed, and why can't I see them? Go looking for the missing bullet holes.